Do you struggle with time management, feeling overwhelmed at all your to-dos? If you have ever wanted to reduce stress in your life and to not constantly feel like when you are thinking about work, you're supposed to be with your kids, or with your kids, you are thinking about work and vice versa. On today's episode of the Rainmaker Family Show, we interviewed Megan Sumrell, who has created amazing systems when it comes to work-life harmony and reducing stress and overwhelm in your life. And some of these principles that we even talked about on the show today, I have never heard anyone share before. And they were huge for even the way I think Stephen and I are going to approach like our calendar and the year and even looking forward to the future. So you're going to love this episode. Rainmakers, I am so excited to have Megan on the show. I think you are going to have your notes ready. I want to encourage you to be taking notes on your phone or on paper, just of the strategy that Megan has for you. Like we've talked a little bit offline, and what she's going to share, I think will be such a game changer for so many of you as we head into, I feel like the second part of this year, how to, I think, accomplish more with less time to have less overwhelm. So Megan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. And I think the time of this is great because I hate to say it, but Q4 is like right there. And as moms, like it feels like the day we're done trick or treating, it's like, gentlemen, start your engines to get through the holiday season. It's a lot.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of this it can be a very just blur of a season, right? But also can be intentional. I would love to hear. I know you're really known for a lot of things, and we're going to get into a lot of the topics around organization and setting goals. But I wanted to kind of start with that topic because I feel like when we start getting around the end of the year, people start thinking goals, especially when we get to that first of the year. It's something about January. It's like new year, new me. Tell me your philosophy on goal setting. Do you wait till January to do this, or how are you seeing it be most effective?
So first of all, I love that you said that, everyone does the new year, new me. Like I can't stand that phrase because I'm like, how about we just have a new year and it's the same you and we're just doing different things? Like there's nothing wrong with the old you. We just get to do, opportunity to do some new things. So I was actually just doing some work on goal setting today and helping some folks understand a subtle thing about goal setting that I think really leads people to a lot of failure. There's two things. One is they feel like the only time they can do it is January, like January 1st. And if they miss that window, like the whole year is gone. There's no wrong time to set a goal for yourself. You are not confined to a specific date or season to do that. But the second really subtle thing is usually the way people are taught how to create a goal and how to kind of set up a plan to achieve it, 99% of the time doesn't work because goal planning and goal setting by itself is not actually comprehensive enough planning to support you to hit your goals. Wow. So a lot of people are doing goal setting kind of in a vacuum, right? You'll go to a conference and they'll have you, where do you want to be 3 years from now? And let's create a big vision for that. And then you break it down into milestones. You're like, next year I'm going to do this and the year after do that. And then you go home and the realities of your kids, your life, your schedule, the school calendar smack you in the face. And you're like, how am I supposed to do all that stuff I just got really excited about? And so this is why I get really passionate about helping people learn how to plan in a comprehensive way that's looking at, here's the realities of my life. Here are the things I desire to do. How do I integrate those together so that we're moving forward on all of it? And I actually do my annual planning in October for the upcoming year.
That's awesome.
And what is strategic about October versus January?
Yeah. So October, very intentionally for a reason. Again, as I mentioned, I feel like as soon as November 1st hits, it's all the holidays, right? November and December. And we tend to, particularly if you're a parent, we tend to have a lot of extra stuff on our plate, both for our children, for their schools or activities, whatnot. And then in your own home, as you're prepping for the holidays, maybe you're hosting Thanksgiving or, Christmas or Hanukkah or all of those things. And so we tend to live a little bit more day to day in November and December. So then what people do is they say, okay, well, I'm just going to wait till January. Well, January 1st, you're like, well, I'm kind of tired, right? So let me wait till the kids go back to school and then I'll do it. Well, now if you're sitting down, say January 6th to do your goal setting for the year, for me, that's a lengthy process. So it might take me a week or two to really get a good roadmap together. Well, now it's almost putting it to the end of January. So we've missed this whole month. And then February sets in and it's like, no one likes February. It's cold. It's, we're like, oh, spring's coming. And all of a sudden you find it's April and you're now kind of kicking it in for the year. So I think by creating our plans in October for the following year, it relieves some stress of that nagging voice in November, December going, we kind of done any planning. We got to figure out what we're going to do next year. It's done. And then instead, the beginning of January, instead of spending all this time creating your plan, you're reviewing the roadmap you built in October and think, does this still feel good? And it's, a couple little tweaks and shifts there. And now you're not wasting the first quarter, not really being in action. Like I know exactly what I'm doing and it relieves that it's a new year feeling. I'm like, no, I did my plan and I'm just going to wake up and keep on moving instead of feeling like I have to do this whole reset button.
That's amazing.
I love that. What would you say, like, when we're talking about goal setting, what are other like fatal mistakes people make when it comes to setting goals, like setting themselves up for failure?
Being very unrealistic with mapping out how much time things are going to take. And not from how long achieving that specific goal is going to take, but forgetting to look at the realities of their life, of what they have going on at the time in which they're working through that goal. So I know, I have a lot of moms in my community as well. And I don't know if you guys are familiar, a lot of people are using the term Maycember right now. Like it seems like the month of May is almost turning into a mini December if you have kids with end of season sports and graduate. I mean, it's like, it's crazy pants. And so if you're not taking a look at that, and maybe you've set a goal for yourself that you're like, all right, I'm going to work on this new ebook that I'm building out and I'm going to launch it in May. And you're doing this in a silo without realizing, looking at the reality of your life, you might go, you know what? That's a really bad time for me to plan to do that. But if you're not integrating all of that together, you just tend to set really unrealistic dates with your goals because you're not combining in what your life is really going to be like.
How would you help like one of your clients if they did say want to launch the ebook in May and they're realizing, oh man, I did not plan well with my schedule? Because I think sometimes we realize that we didn't plan enough time, but then we like start beating ourselves up for it. So what is kind of like that internal talk or things that you would coach a student through? Because that happens a lot too. Like then you just get bummed. And then you're in this cycle and you don't even move forward because you're still beating yourself up for it.
So first, I always want people to understand when you create a plan for something, whether it's a goal with dates or whatever it is, I always approach it of this is my plan, always subject to change. I always like to put that caveat in there, always subject to change. Just as you're getting in your car, you plug in an address, right, to your phone, and it's telling you which way to go. I did a road trip last weekend, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, we're rerouting you because there's an accident over here, right? The plan's changed. Now, does that mean I just stop my car and go, forget it? I'm not going home. Like that's it. It's all out. No, I'm going to accommodate. I'm going to shift the plan and I'm going to move over. And I might not get there when I wanted to, but the goal is to finish and have that definition of done. What is it that you wanted to achieve? The date is not a measure of your success of having that done. So first and foremost is always let's analyze why this date is no longer achievable, right? Was it something out of your control happened? And if that's the answer, we let it go. Like all guilt is gone, 100% out of your control. Now let's replan and figure out what the end line's going to look like and how we're going to get there. Now, the other two reasons that things tend to not happen is one might be you just didn't do the work, right? It happens. You didn't feel like it. You procrastinated. We always, maybe I'll get to it later. You woke up that day, you weren't in the mood. If that's the case, that's a very different conversation because now we get to dig into why did the activities not happen? And it may be that this was a goal you got shooted into. It wasn't yours. It was something someone else had for you. And like this happened to me years ago when a lot of people really encouraged me to write a book. And so I started on it and I kept not doing the work. And I finally had to sit down with myself and say, this isn't my goal. This is somebody else's. And I got shoulded into it because they were saying I should write the book. So in that case, I gave myself permission to say, this isn't my goal anymore, right? It's gone. Now, the other one can be, I didn't plan realistically. I had this goal and I really didn't realize that I'd forgotten that we had spring break and we had graduation and we had this and we had the other, and I literally didn't have the time. Well, now we get to have the conversation around, great. Now let's learn how to create a realistic integrated plan that you get to follow moving forward. And now you have that skill set to apply to all of your future planning as well.
I'm going to talk about to-do lists. We talked about this right before the show. And I know me and Chelsey, we love a good to-do list, but sometimes it can be also the most depressing part of the day, right? If you have a big list in front of yourself, I have a little iPad right in front of here, and I do use that to write down stuff. But I find I get to the end of the day, if I didn't do the things on there, it can really affect my mood because we're driven people, we're entrepreneurs, we like checking the box. And you said something at the beginning and you opened a loop, and I'm like, I don't need to hear the end of this loop. You're like, to-do lists people are doing them all wrong, basically. Yeah. So I want to dig into this. Tell us the secrets.
Yeah. So whenever I tell people your daily task list is keeping you overwhelmed, they don't like that at first. They're like, but how am I supposed to remember what to do? Right. Yeah. Our intent for our to-do list is a really good one. We have goals, we have things we want to get done, and we have things we don't want to forget, right? So we're jotting it down so we don't forget to do it. And the fact is, 25-ish years ago, more than that now, I went through all the Franklin Covey trainings and all of that. And the vast majority of productivity and time management systems out there taught this process. Wake up in the morning, do your brain dump, right? Get the list of everything that you can think of that needs to get done for the day. Then someone decided to say, circle the top 3. I've spent hours looking at it. There's no research behind why someone said top 3, but everyone went with that. And now your goal is to focus on those top 3 things first and don't do anything until they're done. And now spend the rest of your day trying to get as many of the other check marks done as possible. Maybe 25, 30 years ago, when we didn't have all the technology advancements that we have today, right? It kind of served. And it served me well for a long time as a single woman in a corporate job with no cell phone, no home computer, and no internet, because things weren't coming at me getting added to the list all day long. But now we live in a world where it's like one thing gets checked off and 50 new things are coming in at you through all sorts of information hubs. So here's what's subtly happening with working from a daily to-do list that's actually keeping you kind of anxious and overwhelmed. So first is the idea of decision fatigue, which I'm sure we've all experienced. Like, it's the end of a long day. Yeah. And, Chelsey, maybe you're like, hey, where do you want to go for dinner? Seems like, where do you want to go? And you're like, oh my God, please just decide. Like, please don't make me make any more choices.
We've
been
there.
When you are working from a to-do list, let's say you've got 17 things on your list for the day. Every time you look at it to say, what am I going to do now? You're asking your brain to make a decision. And every time you ask your brain to make a decision, that's actually one of the most taxing things that ignites our brain. It's one of the hardest things we ask it to do all day long. And the more things it's comparing against, the harder it has to work. So if you have 17 things on your list, your brain's like, oh my gosh, which one to do first? It actually triggers the same response of fight or flight. And when we're in that mode, our brain is programmed to do something that makes you feel good. Like if it's a tiger in your house, you're going to run, right? That's the safe thing to do. Well, if it's a big list like that, what your brain is now saying is, how do I feel good? I get a check mark as fast as I can. And usually that means you pick the lowest hanging fruit, which is oftentimes not the most important thing, right? And then your brain's like, oh, thank God you gave me a check mark. Great. And now we go back through the decision-making process again. So all these micro decisions all day long are leading to decision fatigue. And then they're also very subtly tending to keep us focused on the quickest wins that we can get. And oftentimes it's not the most important work. So we end up falling into that trap of busy being busy. And so those longer term projects kind of keep lingering on because we're like, well, in
Yeah.
order to do that, I need 4 free hours. I don't have that right now. So let me go off and, do this silly
Yeah.
thing that really isn't that important. Now, the other thing that this task making or task living does is it keeps us living very much in what I call just in time living or very reactive living. Because let's say you were writing, hey, I'm going to write a book, like you actually had that goal for yourself. On your task list for the day, if you had work on book, what are the chances that's going to be what you're going to jump into first? You're like, well, I don't have time for that. I'll get to that tomorrow. And so we end up always just focusing on what are the things that are screaming loudest at me now. And we stay very reactive to those. And so, especially in business, when I see people, sharing with me how they're spending their day, 90% of the time, it's like at least 75% of how they've spent their time that day are not on the longer term projects that would actually start generating revenue and have a tremendous impact because those don't fit on a daily task list and they can't get a check mark that day.
Wow. That's big.
What would you say to like prepare, someone to get those bigger projects done? Like how do you, mentally get yourself there and not have all the other things that are needing to get done at some point, but not as equally as important. And like you said, generating revenue. So what is the game plan that needs to be put in place?
So the big shift is really to move away from this daily task list way of living and move towards weekly planning and monthly planning instead. So, and they're two different planning processes, but they support each other. And I always start teaching people the weekly planning process because you need to learn how to get out of the weeds of this, kind of hamster wheel lifestyle to create the space to say, okay, now I'm seeing how I can have pockets of time. So I can kind of share a very shortened version of the weekly planning process. I'll give you guys 3 steps that you can use today. As people start to master it, it turns into a 10-step process. And before you think, how the heck am I supposed to have time for that? I'll do it in 15 minutes or less every week. And it sets me up for the entire week. No more daily list making. Like that's it. It's 15 minutes a week.
Awesome.
And so the first step in this is first understanding what are your current commitments? Like what's on your calendar today, such as, our scheduled time here today, maybe taking kids to soccer practice, whatever that might be. So the appointments get plugged in. And the whole point of this weekly planning process is to really back into understanding how much time do you actually have, right? With our money, we can do that very easily. Log into the bank account, how much money is actually there, right? But with our time, it's a little bit harder to do that. So most people have commitments on a calendar and then their list of everything else somewhere else, right? Well, we need to learn how we merge those two together, all of it living in our calendar. So once we've got our current commitments in there, the second step, and this is especially important for parents, is actually acknowledging when can you not be working because of family life, right? If I just looked at my commitments on my calendar today, it would look like I only need 2 hours of work and I've got all the free time in the world. Well, from 5:30 in the morning to 9 a.m., I am very busy as a mom. Like all the stuff going on. I'm not going to be getting any work done or things on my task list. Along with every afternoon, I'm done at 2:15 because then I'm transitioning to school pickup. And then running the afternoon gauntlet with kids. If you know, right? The getting to school project and the homework and the this and the dinner prep. That doesn't usually show up on people's calendars. So it would look like I could get a lot done today. But I already go in and block off. This is when I'm unavailable. I'm awake. I'm doing things, but I'm not getting stuff done on my list. I call that my busy being busy time. And so actually put that into your calendar to see, for me, that's another 5 hours of my day every day is spent in mom family mode where I'm not getting stuff on my task list done. I'm not even really sure what we do, but we're all really tired as we're doing it. And then the third step, especially for business owners, I encourage you to create a list. Now, there is a time and a place for a list of the things that you need or want to do on a recurring basis each week as a business owner. So maybe you're writing a weekly newsletter or creating social media content or doing customer support every day, right? We all have things that fall on our plate that we're like, I've got to fit these tasks in every week, and go reference that list. And then from there, you're actually looking at your calendar and creating appointments with yourself. When am I actually getting those things done? And when you're doing that, it gives you the opportunity to say, can I create routines for efficiency around this? Right. So, like, I have 5 reports that I do every single week. Makes a lot more sense for me to wait and do all 5 of them at once and have like a 40-minute KPI session once a week than trying to run one report on Monday and one on Tuesday. And I'm on this spreadsheet, I'm on that spreadsheet. Right. But we actually need to now create appointments with ourselves to see how much time does this take? And now what's left over? And for some people, the first time they do this, they realize there's nothing left over. And now we know why they're not making progress on those longer term goals, right? That they haven't even had the awareness that there was no time left in their bank account for that. And I know you've got the zone of genius of now saying, now let me help you outsource some of this to free up that time, right? But that really is just starting to get in the habit of putting what you know into a plan for the week is really step one to helping you understand what is your actual available time, so that now we can create realistic pockets of time to be working on those longer term goals.
Any seasoned entrepreneur will tell you it's not about how much you make, it's how much you keep. We got to increase your income while decreasing your expenses. So what if there's a way to decrease your taxes, to protect you against liability, and to open up doors to business funding for your business? This is where our friends at Prime Corporate Services come in handy. They're experts and they help our Rainmakers get structured in the right way. We worked out a deal with them just for our Rainmaker community to get you a free complimentary consultation with one of their experts. If you're starting a business and you want to get all your ducks in a row when it comes to the legal entity for your business structure, these guys are the go-to. If for a similar package, you would pay like $1,200 on LegalZoom, but this company gives our Rainmaker family a serious hookup. Not only can Prime help you out with getting all your business entities set up, they can help you with your taxes as your business is rolling, and eventually help you with even estate planning for your family legacy. We put all the info on rainmakerfamily.com/deals. Go there, you can book a free complimentary consultation with Prime Corporate and get set up today. Again, that's rainmakerfamily.com/deals.
Megan, I think there's 2 things that you've said that I don't think I've ever heard anyone say. And one is a little further back about you doing your yearly planning in October. I don't think I've ever heard a business owner, and maybe Stephen has, I'm not sure, like doing it then. But I love that because there is a sense of like the holidays and the busyness and just like the pressing pause. I think everybody is like trying to breathe, but also trying to soak in the magic of what the holidays can be for people. Yeah. And then I loved how you just shared about the calendar and planning your week. We very much plan our week. We have like a family meeting, but you taking it a step further and just marking out the time that you are unavailable with your family time and just like giving you a more realistic viewpoint of like what your day will actually be looking like. So I think those are 2 keys that
and if you're struggling with, I know I was early in business, like that guilt of when you're with your kids, you're feeling guilty because you should be doing something with business. When you're working, you're like, I should be here.
Yeah.
When it's all in your calendar like that, it gives you that freedom to release that low level of guilt that you're having. Cause I can be like, no, it's okay. I'm not working on this thing now. Today's, what day is it that we're recording? I have to look at my calendar. Today's Tuesday. Hey, Megan, it's okay. You're not working on that project till Friday because you've blocked out 3 hours to do it on Friday. So then when I shut off and go spend time with my family, I don't have that low grade voice going, oh, gotta get this done. When are we going to get it done? I'm like, I know when I'm getting it done. My plan is showing me that. And then when I'm at work, I don't have to feel guilty if I'm not doing something outside of work. So I'm like, no, look, I have 3 hours this afternoon where I'm checking out and I'm leaving work behind. And it really helps stop that internal battle that so many entrepreneurs have of feeling this push-pull between home life and work life.
One more question for you on the bigger goal. So you got your week plan. You see some chunks of time finally. You're like, ooh, it's time for me to work on that huge goal, right? Yep. The goal is too big to fit in that small chunk. What's your first step on chunking down a big goal? Like say it's something that's going to take you a whole 6 months or a year and you have 3 hours free. Like
So
what's your plan for fitting that into? How do you approach it?
it depends on the goal type. So there's 2 goal types out there. One is the type of goal that has the same repeated activities over and over and over in order to hit it. So easy example, like let's say you had a goal to run a marathon, right? It's not some big project plan. It's like, well, I need to create time 3 days a week to be running, right? And you're just mapping out your running. So that's the kind where it's a lot easier to plan out because what you get to decide is say, okay, how much time per week am I dedicating towards this goal to do this repeated activity? And so when you sit down to do your weekly planning, that gets put in as an actual appointment with yourself, just like any other activity that you're doing. Now, the other type of goal, which is the more project based, which is like step 1, step 2, step 3, that's not as simple as great. I'm going to carve out 3 mornings a week for an hour to go running and I'm going to plug that into my calendar. So for those, when the time comes that I'm actually starting on one, we do go through the process of creating what are all of the things that I can think of that need to get done in order to complete this goal. So, maybe you have a goal of starting a podcast, right? Okay, what do I need to do about that? Well, I need to research things about here. I need to pick out music. I'll need to find a video edit, all the stuff that you can think of. You get all of that written down. And I encourage people when you're doing that, don't be thinking of timeline yet. Just throw it all out there with everything that you can think of. Once you're looking at it all, now we get to say, okay, what makes sense in terms of a chronological order of events, right? So what might be the first thing I would do, second thing I would do? Now, once you have that in place, now you get to go, how much time do I think these are going to take? So the idea is, let's say you've got one of those weeks where you're working on that longer term goal and you're realizing, okay, Thursday's pretty wide open. Great. I'm going to keep making progress on that. If you've already got that goal mapped out, well, now you get to go look at what was the next step of this. All right. Well, this was a step that I thought might take me 2 hours. Great. I'm going to put the appointment in my calendar that says from 9 to 11, I am working on this particular step of this project. And I've been working on a longer, about an 8-week goal right now for a very large thing with the business that's requiring about 37 emails that need to be written. And so for me, it's been chunked out that I spend 2 hours twice a week working on the email content, and it's going in as an appointment on my calendar. And when we start to do that, what's really nice, especially if it's something maybe you don't love, like writing's not my most favorite thing to do, which is why I didn't chose much to write the book. When it's time to work and I sit down and look at my plan and it says, hey, you're writing emails for a couple hours this morning, my first thought is, nah, like I'll do it later, right? Like I don't want to do that. But when you plan this way, it's showing me you don't have later, Megan. Because if you don't do it now, tomorrow you're doing this, Thursday you're doing this, Friday you're doing this. So if you don't do it now, it's either A, not getting done, or B, you're going to try and squeeze it in at night. And you have a rule that you don't work at night. So another really great benefit to building out a detailed weekly plan is it really helps you avoid procrastination on those kind of projects. And then what's nice is, if you've got that broken down list of steps with your big goal, maybe it's a 27-step process. Well, when you did step 2, guess what? You can still go check that off. You have the joy of the check mark, right? And then when time permits to keep going, you know exactly where to pick off next because you've put that thought into how to get there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
I can see the overwhelm coming down of just having a plan in advance. And I think for me, the biggest thing, and we've even done this before, whether it's a business thing or a personal thing, like I want to clean the garage, and every time I go into the garage, it's overwhelming. But Stephen and I have learned, like, we're putting it in the calendar, clean the garage on this weekend when the boys are napping. And I will even come to Stephen like throughout the week if I know, like, say this coming weekend, we're supposed to clean the garage. Stephen will have to remind me, hey, we have it in the calendar.
Because she'll bring it up on Wednesday and Thursday. Hey, I want to clean the garage. I'm like, hey, did you remember?
I've gotten better, but it's just
That's been
like,
so
it's
helpful.
this mental gymnastics that we do that is sometimes more overwhelming, stimulating, stressful than we even realize. So that's why I love that you're just suggesting like calendaring things so well. And it's just so important because then you can let your mind rest. And we always say, like, be kind to your mind. If we could be kind to our mind, especially women and moms, like, I think we would live in such a more like peaceful, less overwhelmed state if we would just learn these little structures initially.
Yeah.
So I love
And it's
this,
such a
Megan.
different, like when you think about that task list way of living, you're actually starting your day with, okay, what do I have to do today? That sounds stressful already, right? You're starting your day with a question full of expectation, as opposed to when you do planning. I start my day walking in and looking at my plan and going, okay, what am I doing today? It's already there for me.
Yeah.
It's such a different way, kind of even your weekend. No, it's okay. Where every time you walk into the garage, if it's annoying you, God, when are we going to clean it? We have a plan. We're doing it
Yeah.
Saturday. I'm going to let go of the stress until that weekend hits that we know we're going to go ahead and tackle it. It just really frees up all that kind of little inner voice, inner monologue coming at you all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Megan,
You're
for being on
welcome.
the show. This has been so good. If our listeners want to follow you, get connected, what's the best place for them to do that?
Well, if you are a podcast fan, I'd love for you to come check out the Work-Life Harmony podcast. I just share very practical, pragmatic time management and planning tips there. And I probably on social media spend most of my time out on Instagram. So you can just come find me at Megan Sumrell there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Share this with a friend who needs it. Someone who needs a little more organization and optimization in their life with the peace attached to it. So thank you, Megan, for being here. We'll see you guys on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Rainmaker Family Show. If you're not a part of our mastermind yet, I want to say I think you're missing out. Our heart here at Rainmakers is to create total abundance for you. That's why we're offering a free one-on-one family freedom design session for you, our faithful listener.
Yeah, if you want to hop on a call with our team, see if it's a good fit to build a business that creates time freedom for you, financial abundance, and helps you leave that thriving family legacy. That's what we're all about in our mastermind. You can grab a time on our team's calendar at rainmakerfamily.com/mastermind. Again, that's rainmakerfamily.com/mastermind.